Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. For the record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning, and welcome to For the Record. And good morning to all of you neighborhood watch groups out there as well. And we'll talk more about you later on. I trust that everyone had a wonderful evening, enjoyed yourselves, whatever you did, and you're raring to go this morning if you're not already on the move. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and, by extension, For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor, and you're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. During those periods, our phone lines are always open. There is always someone there waiting to take your calls. Normally, that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flo. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. If you don't like to talk on the telephone, email us at fortherecord, one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. And you can also WhatsApp us on 925-3261. We encourage you to either send us a text message or leave us a voice note. If you leave a voice note, we will play the contents of that over the air during the course of the show as well. Today, being Friday, it is the day that has been reserved for the opposition to be on For the Record, and it is my pleasure and my surprise to have in the studio with us this morning not one, not two, but three, and I'm not sure if we're going to get a fourth one as well, and a fourth one to come as well in the studio. So we're going to have an exciting show this morning. Of course, there is not equality of arms here this morning, 3 against 1, but I think they know how that feeling is sometimes themselves, especially Mr. Miller and Mr. McLean, when there were sometimes the two lonely voices on the other side as well. But, folks, it is my pleasure to welcome in the studio with me this morning the Honorable D. Ezard Miller, Leader of the Opposition, MLA and Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Alva Suku, and MLA, Mr. Ard McLean. Gentlemen, good morning. Not that you needed an introduction, but I needed to tell them who was here this morning. Good morning to all of you. Welcome back to For the Record.
Morning, O.C.
Morning, O.C. I'm glad you were surprised. All of us need a little surprise now and again.
Now and then, yes, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So I'm just glad that I could help on that. And good morning to the general public, the listening public as well.
Okay.
Morning, O.C., and morning to the general public. And as usual, we're all happy to be here, and we look forward to an interesting day.
I'm sure that it will be. Lots of things have been happening.
I'm glad that you finally admitted that coming here is an adversarial position, and you got to be careful how you're outnumbered.
and hopefully it'll get a little strong on our side when Chris gets here.
I anticipate it will. Morning, O.C., and thanks for having us. I was actually on with Dwayne yesterday, so I got a little warm up yesterday.
Yes,
so I think I should be ready for
I
today.
heard you. Yes. I listened to you yesterday as well. So I'm going to just start off by how are things going in East End, Mr. McLean, in terms of the road works.
Well, right now there's a little hold up on it. They're waiting on approval from the ministry for some unforeseen expense that after they started. So I'm hoping that Minister Hugh will approve those additional expenditures up there, providing he gets it in his hands. But I'll keep prodding to make sure they get it in their hands. That piece from Lover's Wall up to where they started the paving, that needs to be realigned a little bit, and paved, and the guardrail needs to be put in along there, widen out and guardrail. But by and large, they have done a very good job, and I should publicly thank them for that. And they have completed the majority, well, almost all of the district works, because that is separate from the main arterials, They have done a pretty good job on that. And that is commendable, that they have gotten in all that work up there. Those guys work hard. You remember when I was there, they really worked then. I used to have them out there at night. I used to tell them tie light around their heads. But they work hard. They all stepped up to the plate, and they will, if there is work to be done and they are assigned work. Those guys work hard.
And my friends and I have been remarking about the width of the roads, especially, with the bike lanes and stuff like that. And, you being an engineer and being involved in the roads and everything can probably explain this a little bit more. Some have mentioned, cost-cutting measures, or not cost-cutting, but how it would be more expensive. But it seems as if when you look at some of the roads that the private sector build, in particular the DART organization, comfortable lanes to drive in. The bike, in some areas, you not only have a bike lane, but you have a walking lane as well, which also serves a dual purpose of any derelict and any vehicle that is broken down can be pulled over to the side of the road. When you take the Linford-Pearson Highway that is being done, and even if you took that and you compared it to the east-west arterial going up to Newlands, bike lanes wide enough, very comfortable. You can, if there are walkers there, sometimes you have to negotiate and go a little bit over into the lane, but that's not a problem. But it seems as if everything is squeezed in on the Linford-Pearson side of things, but yet you have a median that is there that is wide open. Why not use that space and that median to give the users of the road users, much more comfortable space to drive in?
Well, you have to appreciate when I changed the narrative on roads in the country in 2006-07 in that area. When we decided to, well, let me say, Gilbert in 2005, Gilbert McLean started changing the narrative, which was that he gazetted the East-West Arterial much wider than any other roadway that had ever been gazetted in this country. Then I came along and built in that corridor. The anticipated roads for this country in the future was 3 lanes in either direction. So on Linford-Pearson Highway, I suspect what they're trying to do there is to leave sufficient in the middle so they can expand in time, over time, and I support that. But
you would have to move the light poles again. There would be no where for the light poles in the middle.
No, you wouldn't. There's sufficient space.
I think so.
Yeah. You just come up to the light pole. Remember, the
street lights you're talking about, no, not CUC pole, because CUC pole is on the outside.
The street lights.
The street lights, yeah. You just come up to the base of that with your curbing, and that's where you get your third lane. And expand it out a little bit in the other lanes. And so that's what they're trying to do. But, if people don't see the need for it now. They expect to utilize it in another manner, and there's nothing wrong with that, providing everybody recognizes that in maybe 30 years down the road we'll have to change that. So maybe we should have done that, but it's very expensive and to pave all that roadway at any one time. So. I'm just hoping they maintain those walk and bicycle lanes. I'm just hoping because
they're making them extremely small.
Yeah, prior to me going there weren't any, and I insisted that we put bike lanes in and walking lanes. So hopefully we'll.
But there's none. There's no bike lane on Linford Pearson, is it?
Yes, there is.
Yes,
or on the outside, a little. Okay.
Yeah. So small you can hardly see it.
Yeah, but that's 6 feet.
Yeah.
That's 6.
It just looks small compared to the other part.
It is very small. We have one caller. Let's see if we can grab that caller before we go to our first commercial break. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC, and good morning to your panel.
Good morning, sir.
I only chose to call this early because it's the only opportunity I get to call, and I'm happy that you brought up the new roads that are being built with no shoulders, because I think it's ridiculous, and I don't care what excuse they use, because the amount of money being spent on the Linford Pearson and on the Dart Highway, it doesn't excuse them for not putting a proper shoulder where cars can pull off completely off the road. And you mentioned that the private company is doing a better job. Well, I can tell you the Hartwell bypass don't have a sufficient shoulder either, because average size car cannot pull off completely without being half on the white line. Mm-hmm. So God forbid that anybody gets a flat or the car breaks down and got pull off, is going to cause issues. And for them to fix that car, if they don't have the resources to call a tow truck and try to do it themselves, they're going to be at risk. Again, I just think that poor planning, and I don't know who approved these things, and I don't care when they talk about no cost savings or no cost measures, because nobody can tell me that they didn't spend an exorbitant amount of money redoing it in Pearson. So why we didn't just put in the proper bicycle lanes and shoulders, because obviously we know that bicycling in this country is very popular, and we have a lot of people who do it. Mm-hmm. And if we don't take into consideration everybody, then what's the sense? We can't just build a brand new elaborate highway with all these roundabouts and shoulders and curbsides and deep wells, and not take into consideration the safety of individuals who commute on these roads, who are going to break down at some point and going to have to come off. And God forbid that there's a dump truck that breaks down, because then he'll take up the whole lane and cause congestion. I just wanted to say that, because I can tell you that I don't understand the sense. And for whatever reason, we're going to go through all of this expenditure now and all of this building and inconvenience on the road, and we're not going to put proper shoulders in it. It don't cost no whole lot of money. It's like the jetways at the airport. But I just wanted to say that, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller, for that as well.
I agree with that, caller. If you look between Red Bay roundabout and Dr. Tomlinson roundabout, you will notice we put the lane on the outside so people can pull off, and up on the West Arterial as well. And I agree. We need to consider all users of the road.
Yes. Okay, we have to go to a commercial break now, folks. Please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have one caller on hold, but before we go to that caller, I want to welcome MLA Mr. Chris Saunders into the studio as well. And if you recall, he was with us last week, Friday, as well. So, Mr. Saunders, good morning. Welcome to For the Record, sir.
Good morning. It's great to be here, OC, and good morning to your listeners.
Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning to you, OC, and good morning to your guests.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Just a couple of questions me and you're going to have here this morning, OC. Is this radio station owned by the people of this country, or is it owned by a few individuals, which is meaning politicians?
It's owned by the government, and the government of the Cayman Islands is the people of the Cayman Islands.
That's us, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Why it is that, if I want to, comment on issues that the government is doing, if they are doing a good job and I want to give them a compliment on doing a good job, do I am I allowed to say that on the radio?
Sure, sure.
I'm allowed to express my feelings and how I.
Yeah, one way or the other. The only limitations are, we try to avoid people saying anything that may defame someone, and we want people to be as factual as possible. If you're saying it, you're expressing your opinion as opposed to something that is factual. Yeah.
Okay, so if I have something to criticize them about, and I do it in a very respectful way, do I have that right also?
Everybody has a right to speak their mind whilst being respectful, whether it is me or anyone else. We're all open to others' opinion, or we should be, and I think that's fair. That's fair, and in any society, in any democracy, freedom of speech is what it's about. That's why I didn't know we had so many people named in this country anonymous.
Thank you, Arden. My point is in my that I wanted to get to. There's another talk show that comes on at about 12:15. As soon as someone get on there and have anything very positive to say about the government, the conversation will go on forever and it will last, and everybody will be happy. As long as you start to criticize somebody, you get cut off right away, right? It has happened to me once, and I promise you it will never happen to me in life again, because insults I do not accept when I know that I am a Caymanian and I have a right in this country, whether I want to compliment the government on doing a good job or I want to disagree with them in doing a bad job in a very respectful way, right? And I will always maintain, you don't become a chef unless you can take the heat in the kitchen. All right? So thank you very much, gentlemen, and have a good one.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much. I know Mr. McLean commented already. Anybody else want to comment on that?
No, the whole purpose we're here is to listen to the public, whether that be complimentary or critical. That's why we're here.
We can't be afraid to take a little heat every now and then, so that's part of the job.
Well, every now and again is
would be foreign to me and you.
Would be foreign to me, but it takes a certain breed, a certain kind of person to take criticism and don't respond sometimes in opposition to that criticism. But the fact that all of us as politicians have stepped up to the plate. No one is holding any guns to our head to stay in politics, and that's what it's about. Everybody has a reason. I have a reason for everything I do. Mm-hmm. So then, if someone else sees that as something that I should not be doing, I need to explain it, why I did it in that way. And if I find that I'm wrong, then I should be man enough to apologize for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mr. Chris Saunders, it was really good to see you on Saturday night at our initial Neighborhood Watch group meeting. And I want to talk a little bit about the burglaries and stuff. I saw another message again yesterday where someone on the main road in the area, or near the main road in the area, their house was burglarized again.
Yes.
Yesterday.
It is definitely a sad issue, and it is an issue of national concern. I mean, this is not something that is just unique to the Bordentown West community. What I can say that we're doing in that side is that, one, we're looking at setting up some cameras at main areas coming into the district, so at least we can have an idea of what vehicles are coming in, coming out. A few days ago, I reached out to several of the security companies. One said we can get a bulk rate quote in terms of people installing burglar alarm systems, because at the end of the day, cameras are good, but they still tell you the story of what happened. We still want something that's more of a deterrent. So at least if also an alarm system, maybe that in itself will deter people. And then lastly, from a legislative standpoint, what we also need to consider is that when we do catch some of these burglars, if these are people who are on work permit and we find out that they have no work and that they're basically staying there with nothing to do, then we need to put stiffer penalties in place to penalize the people who are holding permits with people who have no work. Because if you have a permit with someone and they're not doing anything, it means that once they're staying here, they're basically illegal. So anything that they're doing is illegal, and we need to also deter people from, taking out a permit for a friend there, or helping this or helping that. So those are the bigger issue that needs to be dealt with, and whether we want to accept it or not. I know last year when we had a spate of burglars, there were 3 guys who recently came out of Northward, and they just went on the just went on a rampage. And even now, I understand from speaking to the RCIPS that there are, I think, 2 guys who are out now that are known for burglaries. Now, most of these guys move in the day. I think at night there was like a kind of set curfew in. But these are the kind of issues that we need to deal with. But I remember one young lady had mentioned to me about the camera as well. Mr. Saunders, I'm not too sure I want people seeing who's coming in and who's going out of the neighborhood, because, well, I mean, again, some people may see it as an invasion of privacy where you see what car is coming in, what car is coming out. But people also need to understand that, in order to be secure, sometimes you have to give up something. You know what I mean? And we're not looking for the cameras to be invasive, but rather to see what cars are coming in, what cars are coming out, and have a better idea of the people. Because most of these criminals will come in and they will scope out the place first before they actually do what it is that they're doing. The burglary that took place in your neck of the woods on Monday, understand that, the criminal, I mean, just by luck, the cameras that we had in different places were able to pick him up before he actually masked up himself. So at least the police, I think, have an idea who it is. So again, and people who have cameras in their home are quite cooperative in terms of providing that information. So it is not something that it is an outright political solution, because members also need to understand that, I mean, even when you call the police, the police is still an after something happened response team. You know what I mean? And of course, if you want police to be proactive in grabbing people, then you're talking about profiling, and some people may say, well, that's not something the police should be doing, because it's kind of difficult to just arrest somebody just from walking the street, even though you may know that they're up to no good.
Yeah.
I mean, some afternoons and some mornings after I drop the kids to school, depending on my schedule, I will drive through the neighborhood, and sometimes you see some guys there, and I'd be like, come, you look like you're up to no good, come jump in, leave. So, it is something that we all need to be vigilant on.
Folks, we're going to our 8 o'clock news. When we return, the conversation will continue with 4 of our MLAs, including the Leader of the Opposition and the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back immediately after the 8 o'clock news. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, we have members of the opposition, starting off with the Leader of the Opposition, Honorable D. Ezard Miller, Deputy Leader, MLA Mr. Alva Suku, MLA Mr. Arden McLean, and MLA Mr. Chris Saunders. We're going to hand the mic over to Mr. Chris Saunders now. We want to talk finance in the Cayman Islands.
Well, I wouldn't quite say that.
He's a shadow Minister of Finance, Development and Economic Development and Financial Services.
I'm going to say opposition spokesperson. Should I get
yes, especially since Shadow Minister has been outlawed.
No, one of the things that we have been working on, OC, is the mortgage issue. I mean, that was one of the things that I think just about everyone on all sides of the divide campaigned on. And one of the things that we have done is we have started doing our own research and everything else, but we have reached a point where we needed to engage a legal mind, and of course none of us on that side is equipped. So we have engaged Dr. Steve Macfield. Steve this is one of the things I know he's very passionate about in terms of doing the research and bringing the necessary amendments to what we need in the consumer protection to give people some protection. One of the things that I think it's important for us to have the public be aware of is that there is no magic fix, because at the end of the day, we have to weigh between the foreclosures that we're having each year as opposed to the new mortgages that are being issued each year. And the new mortgages far outweigh the foreclosures. And at the same time, none of us are prepared to say to a young family who just starting out that we have made the rules in such a way that it's difficult for you to also become a homeowner. So it's also find a balance. But at the same time, too, we also have to recognize that there are certain dynamics within banking itself that is complicated. And even this year has made things a little bit more challenging for banks in that you have Basel III and IFRS 9 that's also coming into play. So those things will also affect banks. One of the things that we're looking at in terms of the solution, and this is something that we are hoping that once we have drafted the necessary amendments to the bill, we're looking to take it on a roadshow and explain it to the public why we're doing what we're doing, because it's important for them to also recognize that there are certain challenges. I give an example, just putting it out there. One of the things that banks have is something called liquidity risk. And in essence, what they have done is taken a liquid asset deposit and have made it illiquid in terms of giving someone a 20-year loan. And no bank will say to you that I have a deposit there for 20 years. So in other words, now you're taking... Also, then you also bring in a different kind of risk, because now it's also a timing issue. So most deposits are, if someone even does a fix, maybe 1 year, 2 year, no more than 5, but you're lending money out for 25 years. So there's a mismatch again. So one of the things of the solution that we'll be looking at is the part of the pension money that is required to be cash or held in cash, bring that money back here. So at least you can say to the banks, well, listen, you guys are all rated good banks. I mean, anything is wrong. I like having the money versus there or over years and different. You can now say, here you have a steady stream of deposits that you can all lend again. So your risk have now been reduced. Because at the end of the day, the higher the risk is pretty much the higher the cost from that standpoint. So those are the kind of things that we need to look at. But at the same time also, people do need some level of protection in terms of the equity. And it can't be like a one-size-fit-all in terms of foreclosures. So a person who would have been 3 years into a mortgage and would have fallen behind versus someone who's been paying for 15 years, that kind of stuff, falling behind, are two complete different things. But as it stands right now, because one person would have more equity build up versus one would have less. And for us, it's about really protecting people's equity, protecting people's investment. You know, just ironic, just last night, Minister Seymour had called me. He had his clinic yesterday. And, you know, one lady came in and he said, you know, Chris, she literally almost made me cry. I mean, she's literally 2 years from retirement. And I think the balance on her mortgage is still quite substantial. And what really scares me is that for a bank to have allowed a person to be 2 years from retirement and still have that kind of balance, no, that is the kind of situation you have to say to the banks, listen, you need to eat that. You know what I mean? There is no way you should have had yourself in a situation where a person well past the normal...
Unless some conditions change after the loan was granted.
It is about finding that middle ground. You know what I mean? And like I said, we do understand. I mean, 10 years ago, we had close to 600 banks. Today, we have 1 or 200. So the banking dynamics have changed. You know what I mean? But at the same time, too, some things that have not changed is that we still have some greedy, cold bankers out there, too. You know what I mean? And we also need to deal with them. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say it's a magic bullet, because it is not. You know, but it's a matter about finding that balance. And one of the things that we have agreed is that, listen, we're not setting up any committees or we're not doing this. We need to come now with a solid solution that entails everybody understanding, find that middle ground. Right now, it is still tilted too much towards the bank. The next issue that we need to deal with is, whether we want to accept it or not, is that this problem came about particularly driven by one reason. We have amended immigration laws to basically force people to go invest in real estate to get points to become Caymanian. It is mathematically impossible to get those points without a real estate investment. And if you could put yourself in the people who are applying for PR shoes, I would not go out and pay full price for something, and I'm not even guaranteed to get the PR either. So I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to go looking for a bargain. And unfortunately, that bargain is people who are basically struggling. And we can't, in good conscience, build a society where the new members are looking to take from the older members of the society, because that is where you're going to have some social disharmony within the system. So part of the other issue that we need to look at also is, why do we have the demand for these distressed properties? We need to reduce it. Now, I've long held the point that the point system should be conditional based on you going out and securing this. Because then that way now, if you can say, well, you get the points and you get them within 6 to 12 months after PR to go make the real estate investment. Someone may say, well, you know what, let me go build my dream home, as opposed to in the present system where we go looking for bargaining.
To be able to qualify, yes.
You know what I mean? So these are the kind of conversations. So it is not just a one-size-fits-all. And what the public also needs to understand is that, you know, with government, it is a zero-sum game. I mean, in the private sector, you can have competition. One business can compete and put other business out of business. But they don't care about what happened to the staff in those businesses. At a government level, you then have to worry about the unemployed people. So it always has to be a situation. And you see in the United States, I mean, one of the biggest capitalist countries, they will tell you, you can compete. You just can't win. You know what I mean? And so it's a matter of finding out. And as we are as a young democracy going up through, these are the kind of legislation that we need. But in this day and age, at 2018, to not have a proper mortgage law to protect people, yet you have over 4,000 something mortgages. And plus those over the years, I mean, it's almost unconscionable. So I want to thank Dr. Macfield for the research that he's also doing. I mean, I know some of the first legislation that I came across, Steve showed it to me. And I know this is something he's passionate about. And this is something that we have decided that we're going to pay for out of our own pockets. So I don't want anyone to feel as if, though, this is some, you know what I mean, kind of thing. But I think it is a responsible thing to do.
Okay, now I have a question for the Leader of the Opposition, in that we see that MLA Kenneth Bryan is also proposing, and it appears will be bringing a private member's motion in this regard. How can you reconcile it so that the official opposition isn't coming with something and another member of the Legislative Assembly is coming with something similar? So his motion, it is quite possible that the government may say at the end of the day, well, you know, we're rejecting your motion because
but it's two different.
Actually, I think they're actually two different approaches.
He wants to look at the
right, but we finished looking.
We at this point right now, it's time for, we are legislators first and foremost.
But what I'm saying is he's trying to get to where you are already. To avoid a duplication, how do we avoid that?
In fairness, okay, I'll answer that actually. Right. I mean, in fairness, Kenneth Hart is in the right place, and I don't want to take that from anything. We're what Kenneth is proposing, we have already been through that discussion, and you know, just last night I was speaking to our constituents about it, and
he was part of that because this discussion took place on the Assembly with motions that Mr. Chris brought in August last year. You know?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. So here's the flip side. The flip side is this: the public at this point, we need legislative changes to protect people. All 19 of us that are elected are all legislators, first and foremost. Any single one of us can bring the relevant laws, and at this point, we have decided, you know what, the time for analysis, the time for looking into this, all of that is done. What the public wants, and I think what the public deserves, is a legislation to give them that protection. Now, for us, we just need to make sure that the legislation that we're proposing is also responsible and is also balanced. Because at the same time, again, like I said, we are recognizing that there are certain challenges within the banking industry, and there are certain risks that the banks take on that we need to manage. Like I said, it won't be a magic bullet. Everyone will have to give up something in order for us to get some consensus. And that's the reason why once we have amended, we have gotten all the amendments and everything, the next thing for us is then to go and approach the banks to saying, well, we have already spoken to them in that regard, and they have kind of given us the principle or the spirit in which they want us to operate in. And we have already have some pushback in that regard. So the next thing now is to say, well, this is what we're proposing. What say you? Some things they may agree on, some things they disagree on. And then the next step for us now is to go take it to the public and say, well, this is where I think we should be, our position should be. And then say to the government, listen, we have done all of this work. We have engaged the banks, we have engaged the public. Well, what are you guys' views on this bill now? And go and look the support there across the aisle.
Excellent. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, when we return, we're going to hear from MLA and Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Alva Suku. Please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, we have the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Honorable D. Ezard Miller, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Alva Suku, MLA, Mr. Ard McLean, MLA, Mr. Chris Saunders. Mr. Suku is going to talk about employment or unemployment, depending on which way you look at it. Before we go there, I just want to say that one of our listeners has come back to us and said the Linford Pearson Highway has the same cross section as the Estella Tibbetts Highway. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay. Over to you, Mr. Suku.
Thanks, OC. And I guess I am the shadow minister for
spokesman, official
for Labour. So
opposition spokesman.
Opposition spokesman, whichever. It depends on where we are. But yeah, we see once again unemployment has risen. You know, I don't know. I feel like a stuck record now because I don't know how many times I've talked about this and the issues connected to unemployment. And, you know, I've warned the government several times that unless they shift their focus on how they're developing our people in this country, we're never going to fix this problem. We get these little short-term boosts and changes, but overall the trend is that Caymanian unemployment in particular is not going down. Now, I think this is partly due to the government's policies that they're implementing. I don't think that their policies are working. I keep hearing about this rising tide floating all ships, but what we're seeing evidence of is that the rising tide is not floating all the ships, in particular Caymanians. We haven't invested enough in our people, and I continue to say it. We're developing the country, the economy is growing, but it is not benefiting the majority of Caymanians. And I'm going to jump straight down to, and these are not my figures, but I keep quoting the statistics. More than 40% of our workforce earns less than $2,400 a month. That is a symptom of the cheap labor market that we've developed here. It is a symptom of the greed that has developed here. It is a symptom of the discrimination against Caymanians that has developed here, and it's continuing unchecked. If we do not stop the reliance and the dependency on cheap labor in this country, it's going to continue to get worse. People are now living, 40% of the working population are living below what I would consider a poverty line. Who can survive and raise a family and have any quality of life on $2,400 a month? We all shop the same place. We know how expensive it is to put groceries in your shopping cart. Simple things like food and clothing and so on the cost is increasing, but the wages, the take-home wages, are going lower and lower and lower, and it's because the cheap labor that we're so freely allowing into this country is dragging down the level of salaries and wages. It's not rocket science. It's common sense.
Work permits.
And if you look at the underemployment situation, you have qualified Caymanians who are capable and have demonstrated that they're willing and able to work, who are working part-time. Again, we're into that situation where, you know, people who have made the effort and bettered themselves and gone out and gotten an education are still having trouble finding work. That's discrimination. There's no other word for it. That's discrimination.
How do we make the correction though to ensure that if there are adjustments in the wages, if we get rid of the cheap labor, which means then labor becomes more expensive, that you don't have that knock-on effect then that the cost of living in the Cayman Islands then goes up as well? How do you balance that?
So I just want to chip in on that. And I think it's important to understand the kind of economy that we have. Our tax base, simply put, is consumption-driven. So whether you get paid $10,000 a month or $1,000 a month, you're literally paying the same tax because it's on what it is that you consume. The problem that we have is that we have imported a lot of people who can't afford to stay here. And as a result, the Caymanian middle class has been paying for the cheap labor that we have brought in. And that is why our middle class is under such pressure as it stands right now. So to answer your question, OC, simply put, if you look at the breakdown between the workers that Alva spoke about, between the public workers and the non-public workers. Right now, in the last 7 years, the private sector in this country has been averaging 60% non-Caymanian. Okay, 60%. Mm-hmm. So the engine of our economy is being driven by non-Caymanian labor. Now you look in the civil service, it's 75% Caymanian. And this is one of the things that we had touched on last week, is in that when you start analyzing what is happening here, and his numbers also include the civil servants there, and you take them out and you realize we do have a bigger problem. Okay? The flip side is, as the country grows, the demands on infrastructure, the demands on the government, the size of government grows with it. You know what I mean? And now you hear people talking about we need to get the 100,000 population. And this is the same thing we discussed last week. I remember when we needed to get 50,000 to be set. Mm-hmm. Now all of us reach 100,000. You think with 100,000, you're going to start here in 150. Then, of course, the question is going to be 100,000 of who? Mm-hmm. So this is the kind of situation now where we need to sit down and say to the public, listen, there's got to be a trade-off. Mm-hmm. We know where the analysis and everything else is coming from. But the bottom line about it is, it's about making some hard decisions. No, we can't stop the employers from bringing in cheap labor. But here's what we can do. We can discourage them. Because if we turn our work permit into the true market system that is based on demand and supply. So in other words, no, you take a bartender or you take hotel workers. Some work permits are $3.75. Those are jobs that can be reserved for entry-level Caymanians. But for $1.02 a day in revenue to the government, you're going to deny a young person looking for a starter job to come out. You know what I mean, in terms of that? No, we have Caymanians labor set aside for that. So $3.75 is too cheap. The minute you start putting permits now in line with what Caymanian labor is available, and then you take some permits, for example, like actuaries, like 20,000. How many Caymanians you have that is basically inside the actuarial science? And you start dropping those permits down, and you start using the market system to balance it, then you start get some kind of, we call it equilibrium. What we have right now is that the bulk of the employment are controlled by the employers via the immigration system. Because once they owe a person a permit, they literally have control over that person. And that is what has been suppressing wages, because at the end of the day, it's only fair if you have two people doing the same job, whether they're local or expats, you're kind of expected to pay them the same wage. Yeah. But at the same time, one one has two different responsibilities within the economy. One is just looking to hustle and go, and one is looking to basically stay here and live. You know what I mean? So the fear that I have is that if we continue along this same path, and we have seen it in North America with the election of Donald Trump, we have seen it in in England with the Brexit. Those are immigration driven, and unless we sit down and have this uncomfortable conversation with regards to where immigration is, the reality of it is people are going to rise up one day and just say, you know what, tell with all of this. And it's not like we were doing anything new that Bahamas and other countries haven't done, saying, you know what, all of you just get out of my country.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have 3 calls queued up. We're going to try to take one call before the break, before we go to the break. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning to the host, and good morning to the what can be easily termed as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in the attic.
Oh no, I'm not taking that. Oh no, Johan, I'm not taking that on Friday morning.
Why? That's what I hear them saying, so I'm going to repeat what I hear on the Mall Road. Mm-hmm. But gentlemen, good morning to you. Great
you need to start listening by some asphalt road, you know.
We got some problems with asphalt.
At least chip and spray. Yeah, we can't get the equipment back from the BRAC.
Well, I'll leave that in your capable hands. Because apparently we only have public officials using government equipment for their own purposes here in Grand Cayman. It does happen anywhere else.
This is my too early on a Friday to go there.
We don't want to run out of time now. We have a commercial break to go to.
Yeah, I understand, Mr. Osi. Jumping straight to it. Gentlemen, the 4 of you are there. Thanks so much for making yourself available. Just a quick question and an update, if possible. Have you received an official briefing by the Minister of Tourism and the Ministry of Tourism on the proposed cruise berthing facility? There was some interesting information that was shared in the Cayman Compass, I think it was yesterday, that spoke to something that I find a bit concerning. Mr. Colonel was quoted as saying that the objective of Cal wasn't really to be profitable, it was to just basically drive the economy, so on and so forth. That might well be the case. I love Cal. I'm proud of every single Caymanian that is employed there. But I think it's dangerous when you have the Deputy Premier Leader, Minister for Tourism, speaking to the fact that cost doesn't really matter and we're just doing these things to kind of like move ahead. If that's the prevailing mentality of the sitting government, the cost of this cruise berthing facility is going to far exceed our worst nightmares. So it is hope. I'm hopeful.
Well, the short answer to your question is no, neither on the cruise ship nor the airport.
How is it possible for the opposition to not be given a presentation or briefed on anything, but the business community and the special interest groups that will primarily benefit and who are driving the process, they are more in tune with what's going on than you guys who we chose and elected to represent us? How is that possible? And how is that good governance? Where's the transparency? And how can the governor, who's ultimately responsible for good governance in this country, allow for those sort of things to happen? Second question would be
very quickly, caller. Very quickly.
In light of the concerns about the growth of the economy and the increase in Caymanian unemployment and underemployment, is there anything that both sides agree on that can help our people, as opposed to them thinking that you don't want to help be part of the solution and so on and so forth? Because ultimately, Caymanians don't care who's in charge of the government. We just want to know that we have a place and an opportunity in our country to work, provide for our families, and look out for our responsibilities every day. So is there anything in anywhere that you guys agree on that can help the Caymanian people? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, caller. We'll give you an opportunity to answer that as soon as we return from the commercial break. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have 3 callers. We're going to ask each caller to be as succinct as possible because if you have a question, we want to give our guests here an opportunity to answer the questions as well. And we're going to take all 3 calls and then give our guests an opportunity to answer. First caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. O'Shea. Good morning to all your guests.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
A very important topic that you guys are on in this morning, as usual. I have 2 questions, and I'll ask them and hang up. I need to ask Mr. O'Shea, as the ex-chief immigration officer, can you tell me if you have changed our immigration policy that the employment in the workforce is no longer a 60-40 Caymanian as it used to be before? Have we changed that? And because if that is changed, that is where our number one problem is minimum wage and a ratio. Because I went to a lot of establishments and I see a lot of people that are on permits that they say they're on permits, and if we got more people on permits now than we got Caymanians, that's where our problem is. That's one of our number one problems. So I'll leave it there and hang up for the answer, please.
Thank you very much, caller. Next caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Morning.
And good morning to the leader of the opposition and his crew.
Good morning.
Morning, Doc.
The ministers. I would just like to remind the opposition that the Constitution provides for all of these organizations within the Constitution to assist democracy, to enhance democracy. That's what it says. That's what it says in the explanatory guide to the Constitution. You know them.
Yes.
All of those things like the Judicial Service Commission, the National Security Advisory Commission, all of those things, and the one that is so needed is Section 119, where the Constitution directs the government. It says there shall be advisory district councils in every district to advise the ministers. Why is it that we can't have them? What's the problem? That the only one seems to be functioning is the one in North Side. Why is it that we don't obey the Constitution? That is a direction. It didn't say that maybe or the ministers if they feel like should do it. It says there shall be advisory district councils in every district to advise the members of the district. And you know that really bothers me because it seems to me that they can get every other commission, every other support for democracy, except the one that involves the people directly. That is my thing. The other thing that bothers me is that if you look at the immigration law, and this is to Mr. Suku, who's shadowing in immigration matters, the government is exempt from applying for a work permit. Now, why should the government, be one of the largest employers in the country, be exempt from applying for a work permit like everybody else? That is something that the opposition should look into also. The government should not be exempt from applying for a work permit. The government is not above the law. In fact, Lord Denning said that a long time ago. Not even the Queen in England is above the law. So why should any government here be above the law? Those are the two things. I have so many things, but I know, Mr. For the record, sir, I should be short, so I'm going to be short.
Thank you very much, Doc. Thanks for that. Very, very, very good observation.
Yeah.
Next caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning to your panel.
Morning.
Mr. O.C., when you got buy some more time there, man?
We're working on it.
Working on it?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Good morning, good morning. This one is from Mr. McLean. Mr. McLean, good morning. The Lowers Wall. I see where they put up some of that metal further down, but they stop at practically by the Lowers Wall. Can you answer that question when I hang up, please? Also, Mr. O.C. and Mr. Sanders talking about cheap labor. We ever sat down for a second and wonder who helped create cheap labor? You know who? Our government and immigration. Mm-hmm. That is why so many Caymanians are out of work today, because we look into cheap labor, and cheap labor brings crime to the so small island. So I think that we need to look more into the government, not pointing a finger at no individual government, but I would say all of the government. We just keep bringing, and forget our own Caymanian people who is here that needs to survive in this island. I just want to say this morning, and I'm going to finish. I would say in years to come, the few Caymanians who are left here in Cayman, we're going to be eating or the crumbs under the table of these highfalutin who come here that they can invest and spend money, and we the Caymanians can't get no money to spend, so we will be eating crumbs in the next 10 years under the same highfalutin investors' table. Thank you so much and have a great one.
Thank you very much, caller. That's it for calls, so we got an opportunity to respond to them. Mic's open.
Oh, see, we are getting the crumbs right now. That's not a prediction. That is current state. Mm-hmm. But, I think Johan asked if there's any common ground between the opposition and the government in resolving this. I don't think so. I'm looking at the government's policies, and I've criticized those policies for quite some time now because I've seen where they were not going to work. We give away concessions to every developer that comes here that wants to build something. We encourage all this development. We say we're growing the economy, but at the end of the day, who benefits? The Caymanians are not benefiting. All the cheap labor is doing is accumulating whatever cash they can to wire out of this country. They're not contributing to this economy. Now, yes, eliminating the cheap labor market is going to probably increase the cost to business. What government needs to be looking at is how to keep costs to business reduce the cost of doing business. However, we can't continue developing this country on the backs of Caymanians and at the expense of Caymanians. We haven't developed our people to take these jobs. The other concern I have that not many people are turning their eye to is innovation and automation and technology. All these cheap labor jobs that you see here now are slowly going away due to the advent of technology. So what the cumulative effect of that is going to be is that years from now, we won't even be able to get the cheap labor jobs. They're going to be eliminated. We're not preparing our young people, especially, to survive in a technology-driven world. And until we grasp that 100% and realize the devastating potential that can have on this country, we're in trouble. And as far as finding common ground with the government, I'm tired of trying to tiptoe around the issue that their policies just don't work. Okay. And they need to I thought that this unity government was going to have a slightly different approach, but it seems to be the same PPM agenda. It's not. I don't see any coalition policies. I see same old policies from last administration.
Okay, we're going to try to, we have one caller, we're going to try to squeeze them in. I'm going to answer one other question that was raised. The lady raised the 6-to-40 ratio. The 6-to-40 ratio was in relation to Caymanian own business, unless you had a local companies control license. If you just had a company without a local companies control license, then it has to be 60% owned by Caymanian and could be 40% owned by non-Caymanian, but nothing to do with workers or work permits at all. Let's go to the phone lines. We can squeeze one caller in before the 9 o'clock headline news. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Morning, gentlemen, and morning to Chris, who just came after I called earlier. I just tuned in and heard the labor issue. I'll make it short and sweet, and I think that it's important that we're having a conversation about labor. And Mr. Saku, please don't refer to them as unity government ever again. They're the illusion government. But, and I would just say
smoke and mirror government.
We need to just call this thing for what it is, and we got to stop sidestepping the most important issue in this country next to cost of living. Look, we need to distinguish what cheap labor is, and we need to allocate where and the positions that they can work in only. And first thing we need to do, we need to change the Constitution, because we've gone and written a Constitution that boxed us in a corner. So we can't say certain things without violating somebody's right. Listen, at the end of the day, we can't expect a Caymanian to work in the same workforce that individuals are coming in here working for $4 and $5 and $3, even $6 an hour. Caymanians cannot afford to live in Cayman on those wages. We need to be able to distinguish between their labor and our labor. We need to be able to say these are the jobs that you are eligible to have, and these are the jobs that are secured for Caymanians, point blank, end of story, and we don't need to make no apologies about it. Otherwise, we need to shut this thing down and rethink how we're going to move forward in the future. Otherwise, we're going to take the power from the politicians and we're going to shut it down ourselves, because people are going to stop accepting the rhetoric and the smoke and mirrors and the policies and the excuses about why they can't create a sustainable environment for everybody else. You can't float no ship with holes with no tide, because you're going to drown the people on it. You got to fix the holes. This foolishness about rising tide, the tide already rise above many people in this country, and they're dead, drown in the middle class. We don't have no middle class. We have a struggling poor class who cannot even fathom the thought of being sustainable in this country. But anyway, it's just annoying to hear politicians use all of these elaborate excuses as to why they don't look out for the small people in this country.
Thank you very much.
Stop.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. We have about 2 minutes. Mr. McLean, I think you could get an opportunity to answer the lady that called in about the Lovers' Wall. Even though I believe you mentioned it earlier in the show.
I did earlier, and
yes.
that's part of what was outstanding to finish the roadworks on East End. But just quickly, on this thing about labor, there's a simple solution, and I call it, that's called, he's quite pragmatic about these things, and so am I. There's a simple solution. Government is the largest employer of Caymanians. We all agree on that. Mm-hmm. The single largest employer of Caymanians. Now, their minimum...
And the single largest employer.
Right. Their minimum wage is over $9. Mm-hmm. Simple. We go and set a minimum wage the other day for $6. Set the minimum wage at government lowest wage. That's it.
End of story.
End of story. Mm-hmm. They are paying $9.00, but the last government went and set $6.
$4.50 for the
and then the rest in tips. $6 for our people out there. The last caller understands what I'm talking about. Just set our minimum wage at what government has, and say no work permit is going to be approved under that. Period. Done. It's finished.
We see some jurisdictions where they do a graduated. Let's say if you want to get to $9, you may not want to try to get there all in one jump, but you, over a period of time, you set a period of time that you can reach there. Headline news, please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, members of the opposition, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Diazard Miller, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Alva Suku, MLA, Mr. Ard McLean, MLA, Mr. Christopher Saunders. I believe we're going to throw the mic over to Mr. Saunders at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Osi. Just to support what Alva was saying earlier, I think one of the things that you hear the government and many people speak about is the increase in GDP. And I think it's important for the public to realize that the true measure of a country isn't GDP growth, but also GDP per capita or economic productivity. And one of the things, if you were to look at the main drivers of our economy, which is both tourism and financial services, you see that financial services is flat and or more on a decline, and tourism is more flat with more on a positive side with a little bit of growth. But then when you look at the population itself, you can realize that the population is actually growing faster than the very economies that drive, or the very industries that drive our economy. So simply put, while the pie isn't really growing, the mouths to feed on the pie is getting larger and larger. Mm-hmm. And that is really where the Caymanian people now are beginning to feel it, because
and
people are based...
mouths are becoming smaller.
Yeah.
Because we
and,
can't.
Yeah, and see, this is this. And to go back to Marion and Colin, and like as Ard said, I mean, he's one of the pragmatic person. At some point, and you look through their history, the people just rise up and say, enough is enough. And this is where you will find, a group of real radical people coming in. And I will say to the business people, and I'm going to use a quote from JFK just to remember this: if a free society cannot help the many that are poor, it can't save the few that are rich. And they need to also recognize that at some point, people are just going to say enough is enough. And you have seen it again. Brexit is the English people saying to them, enough is enough. The election of Donald Trump is a lot of the people saying enough is enough. And at some point, the Cayman people are also going to say the same thing. And they say, because I can tell you, when I speak to business people and they say, Chris, boy, I listen to you, you frighten me, you scare me. My response is all the same. No, ask me who scares me. Worry about the person that scares me. Because I can tell you there's some people out there that definitely scares me. And when you're seeing people now, even on some crimes where, in my neck of the woods a few months back, where someone showed up to rob a house while the people are still there, it goes to show we're moving away from burglaries and going into home invasions. And this is a complete escalation. You know what I mean? And at some point, the people... And I would say to the people, if you're going to, I'm not going to say I got to be responsible. I'll leave that one alone. But the bottom line about it is, this is where the policies need to come in. And we can't keep flooding the market with cheap labor. We can't keep flooding the market with people who can't afford to stay here, because that is what is wiping out the Cayman middle class. And at some point, we have to take this immigration beast. We have seen the problem that immigration policies have led to our mortgage foreclosures. We have seen that what immigration have done to cheap labor in terms of unemployment and unemployment. And at some point, we have to go deal with immigration the way in which some people may not like.
Okay. And quickly, just this week alone, I have had visits from 3 young Caymanians, all unemployed, all looking for work, all desperate. One is living in a house by himself, 19 years old, 19 or 20, no electricity, no water, left to fend for himself against this world, and nobody to help him. His aunt called me. She said, can you please... He's in West Bay. He's not even in Newlands. He's in West Bay, and I'm trying to help this young man. There's another one, came to see me yesterday, same thing. He has applied for I don't know how many jobs and has not even gotten the courtesy of a response. Decent young man, didn't do brilliantly in school, but hard worker, ambitious, wants to improve himself, needs a hand up. And nobody is looking out for this young man. It's these situations that I deal with day to day. I don't know if the government has their constituency clinics, if they talk to people, or if it gets through when people come and talk to them. But somebody just sent me a comment about the gray hair in my beard. I know where they're coming from. It's from having to listen to these stories over and over and over.
And we all do. This is non-go. But you see, here's where we're at. We know we have serious problems with crime. We have serious problems with education. We have serious problems with employment. We know pension and health are both pending disasters. Now, the standard incremental addressing of these issues, as previous governments have done, every year we do a little incremental increase. Same players, same old story, same results. What this country needs now is we need what I would call some Darwinian evolution to address these problems. We need to take serious action to address these problems. We almost need the kind of change that went from market to man, right? Because what we're doing, we're all of the problems that exist, the government is dividing their resources and doing some little thing to try to satisfy some pressure group that's coming to them. But we're not addressing the problem and dealing with it in its entirety.
Well,
we can build a $180 million port that we don't need when we are not addressing John Gray High School, when we're not addressing the need for the primary school in the eastern districts in this financial period.
And the technical and vocational training that is needed for our people to
survive. Which can be facilitated in the schools that we already have, but we don't have the resources.
The TVET Council has met once since that was created. Never met again.
2 callers. First caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning to you, Mr. O.C., and good morning to all the members of the
morning, sir.
Panel there. To hear our MLAs, including the leader of the opposition, on because it's the only time that the general public can discourse with them. I'm hearing an echo.
Yeah, we're hearing it on this end too.
I understand and I quite agree with what Mr. Martin said about the minimum wage should be what, and that's what I thought should have been from the beginning. I have to be very careful with what I say. Giving you my opinion from the very beginning, I thought that's how it should have been, the same or no less than the government. Of course, we know whose fault that is, because the elected representatives represent people. So they should have set minimum wage. You know you have to consult the private sector, which employs by far the most people. But over the last 30-odd years, our elected representatives have ceded power to the private sector. And it is very, very difficult now to buy back that power. We can say all we want, but it'll take, just as you were saying a while ago, Mr. Miller, evolutionary sort of thing. It will take Mr. Churchill's famous word, courage. 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 It's the first of all human qualities. It guarantees all the others. Courage. It will take that. Only as we listen to everything you've all been saying and your suggestions, it's obvious that who has to change this situation. From the very beginning, I said the health thing would not work and the pensions would not work because anything mandatory should be paid to the government as a tax. As the Supreme Court told Mr. Obama with his health plan, it is unconstitutional to deduct mandatorily something out of a person's pay that is not going to the government as a tax. And you will see what has happened. I won't say any more about that. But one thing I do know, I hope everyone would try and read those 2 famous paragraphs from Mr. Ian Fleming. This month is 61 years ago since they came out in the April London Sunday Times. Those 2 wonderful short paragraphs that describes Cayman then and tells you what we would become now. Gentlemen, have a wonderful day. Courage is the word, courage.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. Let's take the other caller. Good morning, caller. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning. Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Morning.
I just want to let you all know I'm still your friend, and I love you guys like a brother. But what I'm going to say here is, I'm going to ask a question. You guys in there are part of the government, so I'm going to say that you're part of the legislative assembly. Now, you're very good at articulating speeches, and you come across with some very good expressions. But, gentlemen, what are your plans? Because we've had this issue about discrimination in Cayman, jobless Caymanians, minimum wages and wages that can't suffice people's lifestyle. What are your guys' plans? That's what I want to hear. We all know what the problem is. I want to hear the solution. I want to hear that you guys are going to walk into that legislative assembly, look at your government in the face, and say, we want this for our people. We want changes for our people. We can hear all of the expressions and articulating speeches on the radio every day, but I want to hear a plan.
All right.
Okay?
Let me respond to you. Try to stay right there. OC, when in 2013, after the premier was appointed not by the people, but by the politician, because Julia went over there so he could get the premier. She had been in 3 parties right there within 3 months. In October, August, when we did the law, the appropriation law, that is the budget. We did an interim budget because it was finishing in June, and then we did the main appropriation bill. When we were in committee stage in the committee room, finalizing the minutes, I asked... Finance committee. This is finance committee. I asked for a private meeting, i.e., all politicians. So after the civil servants left, I proposed then, I've said this before, maybe that caller wasn't listening. I proposed that all 18 of us get together and do what was necessary to change laws to assist our people. It was all accepted, and a committee was set up comprising of myself, Mark Watcher, who was the Minister for Finance, the now Deputy Premier, and a number of us to go on it to look at the different things. That committee is yet to meet under the leadership of the Deputy Premier. We have, on numerous occasions in my political career, and particularly recently, made proposals to government about our people. People need to understand, the Caymanian people need to understand that there is no balance in the governance of this country as it is. The Premier called us populists the other day. Well, I think we need to look up that word, populism, populist, because that only manifests what this government is doing. That speaks very clear as to what their objective is. So I believe that that caller and those who would ask what our plans are to do things for people needs to direct that question to the government. The government of the day that is not the people's mandate. It is the business society's mandate.
Okay, folks.
That's the mandate they have. Now, we are here and have always been advocating for people, and that's our plan. You know what our plan needs to be? For you all to get us in government so we can change what's going on in your country.
Folks, please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have 10 minutes before the show closes off. So what we're going to do is we're going to close the phone lines off at this point in time because I want to give all of my guests here this morning an opportunity to have some final comments as well as to speak about things that they may want to talk about that we haven't been able to address yet.
OC, just briefly, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but I see this morning where the 5 bidders now vying for the port project, and Johan did call in about the port and the CAL as well. His saying, him repeating what the Deputy Premier has said about CAL in particular, that it's not about money, is precisely why Cayman Airways is being managed in such an ad hoc manner. And we don't have an objective of trying to make money whilst we're operating that airline. And that has been since that airline was started. Sometimes, and there are so many people in Cayman Airways who are complaining about the working environment and the attitudes of management and the likes. There needs to be some solution to how Cayman Airways is operated. Even if we lose money, you remember Cayman Airways started like $2 million subsidy. It must be up $20-30 million subsidy now.
What's that, 30?
If it continues like that, it's going to be a millstone around our neck. That's what it is. And it will continue to be that, and we defend it on the basis that, it provides a service, which is true, and I fly Cayman Airways, and I'm proud of having it in the air, but we need to manage it properly too. On the port, we have asked 2-3 times, I said?
4 times. 3 times verbally, and that is 2 in writing.
Yeah, and to have update, presentation on the port
and the airport,
and on the airport, the redevelopment of the airport. We have not had any response from that. But that's the nature of the politics in this country. Many of us think that there needs to be one-upmanship. I don't subscribe to that. When I was minister, I gave it to the other members. I didn't want them to be in politics, but that's what the people sent there. So you have to respect that. And everybody has some ideas. When CG, and I'll briefly say, when CG was spearheading this doc, I said, CG, why don't you understand now, though CG and I were fairly close, still remains close. I said, CG, we're looking to do a deep water dock for private vessels. What private vessels like to do is show off. They like to park right in the middle of where there's attention. So what we should do is put a sheltered dock out there at the same time, which is, go out there from the dock and make it curve around there by red spot and stuff out a little further so they can park behind it, and they'll be sheltered. And that's what CG proposed and represented it on there. Everybody has their own ideas, but this dock seems to be going off the rails again. And I don't know how. I see where 5 bidders are vying for it. It's going to be interesting to see who they are. And on a different note, do we really need this dock now?
No.
At this stage, do we really need the dock where, we're getting more passengers now than we have ever had. And they're using tenders. No, we need to upgrade those tenders, but this, I would like to see a proposal. The proposal, I would like to see how it's designed and the likes, because we can't be penny wise and pound foolish on this dock. And that's what I'm seeing coming down the pipe.
Okay, 5 minutes left. Mr. Miller, let's throw the mic over to you, sir.
Well, I want to thank the members of the opposition for coming this morning, and I thought we had a very productive morning. But I think the country needs to realize that what we're interested in is improving the lot of the average Caymanian. We want to make sure that we are developing a country that gives every young Caymanian the opportunity to develop to the greatest potential. And we also want to make sure that every senior citizen is living in comfort and is proud to live in their final years. But we need to address these things, and we need to address them now. But it cannot be addressed by doing what the government is doing, and that is incrementally increasing certain areas. We know we can't afford to fix all areas one time, but let's fix what we believe is the most important areas right now, which is crime and education, and forget about the port for a little while. So I'm glad to be here, and I'll give some time to the other guys.
Yeah, we still have a few minutes.
Okay. Well, first I wanted to just thank Ezard for giving us his time. I think ultimately, just to kind of echo what Ezard said, it's important that we realize that the same thinking that got us into this trouble can't be the same thinking that's going to get us out.
They're the same people.
Yep. And we need at this point, and one of the things that we are working on is our own national strategic plan. I mean, this year make pretty much more than 20 years since we had Vision 2008, which was started in 1997 or thereabouts, 1997, 1998. And we need to create one. I mean, what we're doing is taking a piecemeal approach. We have seen with the development plan, there's pretty much nothing there going on in terms of a little piece here, a little piece there. No one wants to put a plan in out. But at the same time also, we need to recognize that amongst us as a society, we need to start calling things as it is. There are too many conflicted people sitting on these boards. There are some corrupt elements that we have in our society. They like to talk about who's getting this and who's getting that, but no one wants to talk about their conflicts. And I can tell you right now, with the upcoming PSC agenda that we're having, we're dealing with these consultants that will be coming up. We'll also be looking at off-reg. I mean, I want to know what is being done with some of the piss-poor service that people are getting from many of these telecoms providers. And also we're going to take a look at the insurance companies too, what they're doing in terms of both on the health insurance side and also on the house insurance. I mean, as it stands right now, there are too many people that have their hands and their fingers in the hard-working Caymanian people pockets. And I'm going to tell you, just tune into PSCs is going to be quite interesting. But it's time to mash up this dolly house now.
Mr. Suku.
We'll see. On that note, I can't resist because that's in my nature. But the question about what we are going to do. Mm-hmm. Listen, we were in position to do something about it, and two individuals
but these same people went support PPM.
Yeah.
Went support PPM, who told them what they were doing, not doing it, and they want to hold them accountable. Now try and hold us accountable.
And this illegitimate government that we have operating here, because it didn't have a mandate. Neither party has a mandate.
On hold of matrimony.
And now I'm not going to take any heat for them. I'm sorry, because I had my plan. I have my manifesto right here in my hand. That's my plan. Mm-hmm. But, exactly as Mr. McLean said, we need the people to now show us that they're willing to get behind us. We are willing to lead. But get behind us. Let's build some momentum and some support, because this opposition has plans, and we know what needs to be done. We need the opportunity to do it. And I'm determined to be one of these individuals who is going to lead this country come the next opportunity to do so. So, with that said, that's my plan. Put us in the leadership position and let us lead.
Okay. Mr. McLean, any more for you?
No, I just, sometimes, it may seem like it depends on the person and their objective of who will try to question you, that you need to make it very clear. We know who these people are. We know that their objective is to come here or come on the radio and promote the government, and we know the reasons why they do it. And they are complicit. They are complicit in much of what is going on in this country, especially to stifle small contractors in this country so that they can get what they want because they have a door into the government. And some of these people need to stop this, okay? We're talking about you see, the problem is when they're in the same boat, but when the water is and the hole is in their side of the boat, they get concerned, and then when it's in somebody else's side of the boat, they try to make it much bigger.
Okay.
And they need to stop it now too, because we're all Caymanians and we must protect each other. But some of these people don't do that. What they want to do is get their foot in the door with government so that they can get more than anybody else. They need to stop it.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here this morning, for the pleasant surprise as well in terms of all of you being here. And I would encourage you to do it more often as well. Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension, For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want, or even those who crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling Dwayne Banks at 12 noon for a talk today. Have a great weekend, and as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.